We're diving into a lot going on right now across the country, but specifically, we're going to dive into what we're learning in regards to the assassination attempt in Butler County on President Donald Trump. Now, thanks to the great reporting over at Headline USA, we're learning that there was at least 16 Homeland Security investigator agents who were assigned to work the president's detail that same day. Joining me now to discuss and break down the latest on this story is Ken Silva. He is a Headline USA editor, and he joins us now. Ken, thank you for jumping on this early Saturday morning. And you are our very first guest on Good Morning Infowars, so we're glad to have you on. I wanted to dive into your latest report because you guys are kind of sifting through a lot of the documents that are being dumped in that Butler County investigation. Ultimately, we're now learning that there were 16 HSI agents who were there that day, but specifically, these were individuals who were led by the FBI's Joint Terrorism Force. So let's talk about that for a little bit, because that's interesting. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force was the one dealing with these HSI agents. It just doesn't seem to make sense, does it?
Really looking forward to this discussion. And yeah, as you say, these 16 HSI agents, this information came out last year shortly after the assassination attempt. It was revealed by Senator Josh Hawley. And at the time, everybody's like, well, this is a real issue that the Secret Service is so short of resources that they have to replace their trained agents who are, trained to protect the president with HSI agents who do investigations like related to, human trafficking and financial crimes. Like, these guys aren't trained to protect the president. Well, we just got more information about this last week when the Senate released a whole bunch of interview transcripts from the agents on the ground at Butler. Interestingly, one of these agents was the leader of the HSI team. It's a Secret Service agent. We don't know her name. She's out of Phoenix, Arizona, and she talks about, having a, quote, jump team of these 16 agents, and she was kind of the leader that day. And the other new piece of information that, as you says, this lady, not only she is a Secret Service agent, but she said she was a member of the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force. So up to this point, every agent that was interviewed, when the congressional staffers asked them, how many federal agencies were on the ground in Butler? Was the FBI there? They all say no, not until after the shooting. Well, we now know that's not the case. The FBI did have a member of its domestic terrorism task force on the ground that day. The significance of that is unclear. Like, I think a lot of people, their brains will go to January 6th, and HSI was recruiting a lot of informants for that operation. But what I will tell you is this agent made several key mistakes that led to the shooting as well. At 5:45 p.m., about a half an hour before the shooting, she gets notified that there's a suspicious person with a rangefinder outside of the perimeter. She gets in her golf cart with a PSP trooper, and they go to look for crooks, and they go up to a chain link fence that was between the rally site and the AGR building, and she just stops. She says, well, the chain link fence, we couldn't go any further, so I didn't go outside the perimeter and look for the guy. That could be explained by the fact that, she had a lot of work to do inside the site. Maybe there's, Trump hadn't arrived yet. She doesn't want to stray too far from the site. But another even more egregious mistake is another agent, the counter sniper response agent, who's kind of like the gopher on the ground for the snipers up on the barns. Like, the snipers will tell him, hey, go check out this threat. Let us know what's going on so we can know what's going on from up on the barns. Well, that agent also went to go look for crooks, and he met this Joint Terrorism Task Force lady, and she said, hey, no, go back to the stage. Go look south of the site. Don't look near the AGR building because we already have that covered. And to me, that's inexplicable. It's just, we need to know who this lady is and why she did that.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question. And you're referring to the building that was called into question that Secret Service didn't actually manage. Is that correct? Because I feel like I've heard this story before, but Secret Service wasn't taking responsibility for that same building.
Oh yeah, we've heard a variety of excuses. The most infamous one is the director Cheadle said it was too sloped, which obviously everybody makes fun of that. But yeah, the Secret Service, they didn't cover that building at all. They thought maybe their snipers could have a view of the roof. That obviously turned out to be a terrible mistake, and the locals did their best as far as we can tell. But it's inexplicable that they didn't have that building covered or at least blocked off with like farm equipment, so there wasn't a clear line of sight to the president.
It's an absolute disgrace what took place that day, and the failures to say it's incompetence is pretty much dismissing what I think most Americans feel at this point. So we look forward to continuing to cover that one and watch your coverage on it because I know you've been doing an incredible job with that. But I also want to turn to something else because you guys just recently also started talking. Well, you've been covering it for a while now, but you've just recently published this about James Comey's daughter, who was just recently fired by the DOJ after her failure to get Diddy convicted on human trafficking charges. But ultimately, you guys have released this information regarding James Comey's daughter, filed a declaration to keep the FBI's records on Jeffrey Epstein secretive on the grounds that Ghislaine Maxwell could be granted a new trial soon, among other reasons. Now, the judge has just recently sided with Comey's arguments and is allowing that to stay secretive. Break that all down for us because we're hearing from obviously the White House now that they're looking to be more transparent on this issue. So is that truly what's going to happen here?
Well, yeah. So what Maureen Comey did, this was actually under the Biden administration. So the cover up did extend through them. I forget who the plaintiff was. Oh, it was a news organization called Radar Online, and they were suing for the Epstein documents. And Maureen Comey filed a sworn declaration saying that this case is still open. Ghislaine Maxwell might be getting a new trial. We need to keep these records secret. And so that was her excuse. But then the very next week, an appeals court ruled against Ghislaine's appeal. Right now, I think she's still petitioning the Supreme Court, but it was a little silly thinking that she'd get a new trial. But nevertheless, she was part of the cover up. And I think it was actually a mistake to fire her because now, if the DOJ does its own internal investigation into what's going on here, they can't force her to participate in an interview because she's now just a citizen. She could claim, Fifth Amendment rights or anything. You can't, force her to disclose what she knows.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting take too, because I think so many Americans were really upset at the fact that she was the lead prosecutor in two human trafficking cases that they were alleging, both the Diddy one and obviously Ghislaine Maxwell, and she never brought forward any of those important names as to who these victims were being trafficked to. So it's interesting now that this could actually work against us. I know I've been calling for it for a while now. I didn't want to see her being the lead prosecutor in the Diddy case because we knew what happened during Maxwell's case. So that's an interesting take on all of this. I'll ask you, Ken, because I love reading your tweets. We've got about a minute. How would you rate the current administration's transparency in regards to the Epstein files thus far?
Oh man. Well, we knew that these guys were lying when they said that they had surveillance footage that would lend credibility to the theory that Epstein killed himself. And I was screaming about this like for months before they even released the footage. The DOJ Inspector General issued a report a couple years ago that showed which cameras were working and which ones weren't. The one camera that was working clearly didn't have any kind of relevant vantage point. So, I mean, I don't know if Bongino was just getting brief bad information that he was parroting out, but whoever gave him that information really made him, frankly, look like a clown. And one other thing I'll bring up, this isn't the Epstein case, but back to the Trump shooting, Senator Ron Johnson issued a subpoena last week for FBI records on this case. We now know that there's surveillance footage from an ice cream shop that was near the AGR building that has a clear vantage point that would show crooks being chased by the cops. So why isn't the FBI issued this camera footage under, Kash Patel? Like this should have been made public weeks ago, months ago. It's just, It's inexplicable. It's egregious.
It is egregious. Ken, thank you for all the the work you're doing over at Headline USA. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time as always. We look forward to having you back soon. More next.